Hello, everyone. Give me a second to share my screen. We're just going to get started. All righty. Can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up.
Yes, we can.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. So welcome, everyone, to the Digital Portfolio Management Launch and Learn. This is the intro call. My name is Christopher Elliott. I will be your host for all of these sessions. Who will be mostly running these sessions is the wonderful Caitlin Morse. She is our product manager for digital portfolio management and will function as our subject matter expert. Let me admit all here. And I'm just gonna hop right on into it. So if you've been a part of any ServiceNow calls, you're probably familiar with this, but this is our safe harbor notice. Basically what this says is that we will be making some forward-looking statements. That is not a promise to deliver. If you see anything on our roadmap, it is subject to change. We do try our best to be accurate, but things do happen in business. And here's our agenda. It's pretty short and sweet. There's going to be an about us, myself and Caitlin, about this program, goals, expectations. I'll also go through the calendar pretty briefly. And then we're just going to hop directly into what DPM is, the general overview. And at the end, we'll have time for questions. Also, if you have questions anytime during this session while we're talking, feel free to interrupt, unmute yourself. I want this to be as casual as possible. A lot of the reason that we're even having this program is to get your feedback, so don't be shy. And with that, I will start with the About Me section. I will say that we will have Justin Harden and Mike Hall, two engineers on these calls, pretty regular, at least one of them. They don't have slides, but I do want to call them out that we'll have some other people helping out in case you have some more technical questions. So, hello, again, my name is Christopher Elliott. I am the outbound product manager here. I've been with ServiceNow for 8 months. I am the voice of customer lead. Essentially, what that means is that I advocate for the customer. My goal is to close the product expectation gap between ServiceNow and yourselves. I do that through a variety of ways, one of which is this program Launch and Learn, trying to close the feedback loop internally and externally. As far as hobbies are concerned, I do love plants. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a part of my living room that unfortunately has a ton of plants in it. So if you have any plant questions, happy to answer those. Just please, after the call, send me an email or something of the sort. I also love reading, mostly sci-fi and horror. You'll see a few of my favorite novels on the right-hand side. And I love a general adventure. I like hiking, I like camping, being outside. And in the center, you'll see a photo of me and my fiance. We go whitewater rafting with their family at least once every summer. We recently moved up to Seattle, so hoping to explore that area as well. And yeah, that's a bit about me. I will pass it off to the main show, Caitlin Morse here.
Thanks, Chris. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I think I've spoken with some of you throughout my experience with DPM, so thanks again for joining us here in this session. If I haven't met you before, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a product manager here at ServiceNow. I own digital portfolio management, service portfolio management, and service builder. So those are the three main products that I'm involved with, and I've been with ServiceNow for about 6 years. My role with this series will be to cover key topics that we will outline here in a little bit. I'll share like my expertise with the product. I'll help answer questions, and really the idea is to listen to your feedback, your questions, provide support, and help you get the answers and the information that you need to be able to use DPM. Some of my hobbies, I'm a mom, so that takes up a lot of my time, and he's young, so that's always exciting. I like to ride my bike. I used to race, and then now I don't have quite as much time to train, but that always gives me a lot of pleasure and satisfaction. I recently moved back east to Pennsylvania. And so I'm on the East Coast for any other East Coasters. And the bottom picture on the right is a picture of my house, my property. We live on about 10 acres. So that's a lot of gardening and a lot of yard work, but it's incredibly satisfying. It's that instant gratification. So it's really nice. Yeah, it's a little bit about me. Excited to learn more about all of you as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. Your property is beautiful, by the way. This is
Thank
me
you.
to tell you that when I was going through this deck, it looks wonderful.
Thank you.
Of course. And so I'm just going to walk through kind of what to expect from Launch and Learn. 3 parts. The first, of course, we're going to have bi-weekly sessions showcasing important aspects of DPM with the goal of educating and helping you to become a more mature user. That will be followed by a Q&A and discussion section. I do also want to mention this is probably the most I will be talking in any of these sessions. We do want to spend the majority of our time kind of in the product, showing you the different aspects, allowing you to dig in, ask questions, which leads us to the second expectation from that we have on your side is customer feedback. Please be vocal. Ask the stupid question, ask the confusing question. If you hate it, let us know. If you love it, also let us know. Don't be shy. I will be recording profusely in my notepads and Excel, everything that happens during this call. Obviously, anything private, I'll keep to the chest. But we do want to use a lot of this feedback to build better products and better documentation. In that vein, we'll also be sending out surveys. I know that's not everyone's favorite thing, but they do help us to collect feedback when you're not able to be vocal during the call. We'll be sending out some documentation to kind of help you grasp some of the concepts, get a head start for the next session. And we'd also like to get your feedback on that as well. We'll be sending out a survey shortly after this call. Please fill that survey out if you can. And I've kind of already touched on this in the previous slide, but just to drive it home, this is essentially what we are looking to get from this program on our side. We just want to understand where you're having the most trouble. How can we help you adopt faster? Are we thinking about your problems correctly? What solutions are we missing? What documentation is needed? We do try to do our best to build out good documentation to provide solutions that'll really get you to value. But we understand that there are gaps, and we want to learn from you directly what you believe those gaps are. In that vein, what you stand to gain is direct connection with the PM, a connection with a DPM community. I recognize that some of you may feel a little alone in your org sometimes because there's only 5 people that understand what it is that you're doing or even understand what digital portfolio management is. Sessions like these and forums like these will really help you to uncover different use cases, understand how other companies are using these products, and may help you to become more mature in that aspect. Obviously, free tutorials, live demos. And one thing I do also want to point out, you stand to gain escalated support cases. So if you are ever doing something with DPM and you have to raise a support case, or we tell you to raise a support case, please let us know that support case number so that we can track it on our side as well and really expedite the process. During these sessions, we really want you to be able to walk, crawl, run at your own pace, and we're going to do our best to enable you to do that. And this is our schedule. I've already shared this, so you all may be familiar, but just kind of wanted to briefly go through it again and just some of the rules regarding this schedule and general launch and learn. We will be recording all these sessions. We're recording right now. And we'll make those recordings available as soon as we can. We will pause recording upon request. So if you feel that you need to talk about something internal that is a little more private, we're happy to pause the recording if you'd like. It's also okay to miss a session. We hope to learn from you, but ultimately, attendance is to your benefit. We are not going to be slapping anyone on the wrist for not showing up. If you want to even cherry pick and just show up to the sessions that you think will be most pertinent to your business, do that. All we ask is that you give us as much feedback as possible when you do decide to attend. If you want someone to attend in your stay, let's say you did not share that contact information with me previously, all I ask is that you email me beforehand and let me know who will be attending the session, just so that we have their contact information and we just don't have, random people hopping in and out of these calls. And lastly, these dates are subject to change. Things happen, things come up, but we will do our best if there is a change to let you know well ahead of time. We'll definitely send out an email and not just change the dates arbitrarily. And if things go well,
Chris, do you want to note also because someone did bring this up in the chat that we will be moving the May 17th date. What we're trying to figure out is if we should push everything so that it's still, every other week, or if we want to push the May 17th to the following week and then keep the May 31st. So if you want to let us know your preference on that, that would be great. But we will be moving that. And if you are at Knowledge, I will be there. So we're doing a lab on DPM, but it would be great to meet up in person. So do let us know if you're planning to be there.
Thank you.
Sorry,
no, you're good. Thank you. I appreciate that. I definitely should have changed that date. I think we did talk about that previously. But yeah, that's exactly. Dates are subject to change. And these sessions could extend depending on demand from this group, depending on your participation. If there are other aspects of DPM that aren't covered in this calendar and it's something you all really want to see, let us know. And we'll do our best to cover that in a future session. And that is all I have for my portion. I will generally be running all the logistics for this program. So if you have any questions regarding that, please let me know. If anyone has any questions in general about anything I stated, feel free to unmute yourself. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I've got a service builder technical question. So when it's time to do that, let me know.
Beautiful. I can't answer that question, but I'm sure we will be able to towards the end of the call when we have time for Q&A.
Okay.
And for technical questions, Mike and I are monitoring chat. And so please, if it is possible to put it in a small text question, pop that in chat and we'll see if we can help.
We'll do so.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate that. All right. Gonna hand it off to you, Caitlin.
Great, thank you. We did have a couple of questions that I wanted to just cover. Justin's been doing a great job of answering. And I wanted to just cover a couple in case folks didn't see that or just add a little bit more context. One of the questions was around the performance scoring. And I do know that in one of our surveys, we had a question about the relationship between DPM, service portfolio management, and service owner workspace. So for anyone who isn't aware of this, it is really confusing. So service owner workspace is replaced by digital portfolio management. And if you knew anything about that product, really what that was a place for the service owner to go to see run or performance related data for their services and offerings in the context of a service portfolio. We got a lot of feedback about that product being kind of inflexible, difficult to use, and a lot of questions and frustrations around the performance scoring, not being clear about what it means, what's actually driving the score down. And so what we did was we took all that feedback and we brought that into the updates and the product that we made with digital portfolio management. And instead of having a single performance metric that's supposed to give indication of how well or poor the service is performing, we have introduced a concept called KPI groups. If you'll notice on our schedule for May 3rd, we'll be digging into the details of that, but I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like in the overview and the demo today. If you have any questions specifically around how to get the most out of the KPI groups before we actually get to that session, please do feel free to reach out, or we could talk about that today as well. So that's the response to Mike around the SOD. That's a really good question. And I will say that service portfolio management isn't going anywhere. So you can think about service portfolio management as being the core tables that really feed into DPM from the services side. And then one of the other main places that we source data from is from application portfolio management, as well as strategic portfolio management, formerly ITBM. So those kind of base products, base table structures and capabilities are what we then feed into and visualize in the context of DPM. So I hope that kind of answers that. If there are additional questions or comments, please do let me know. And then coming down, Curtis, around the enterprise portfolios. So we will be extending that feature in August. That's something that we're working on, we're starting to work on now, I should say. And what we'll be doing is allowing enterprise portfolios to be created for business applications as well as application services. We will not be connecting the business app directly to the apps, the business app directly to the service. And that's really because we try to align as close as possible to the common services data model. And the way that they have laid out that structure of how a business app is connected to a service, either technical or business, is through that app service and the offering. So we do maintain that data model as close as possible. We try to be flexible in different areas so that it's not as hard to get up and running with DPM. But I do say that that's kind of our where we go to make some of those choices about how things should be connected and how we surface them in DPM. And we will be digging more into that in our, it won't be May 17th, it'll probably be the week following Knowledge. We're going to have Mark Bobman with us and we'll be discussing that. So we can really get into the details there. I'm going to, seems like there's a bunch more questions. So if there's anything in particular, Justin, that you saw, or Chris, that I can call out, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I'll jump into some of our content and that might help answer questions. Oh, I see Lou. Okay. Yep. Do you want to answer or ask your question, Lou?
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. And yeah, beautiful property. Thanks for sharing that. The two questions I have is one with regards to what you had just mentioned. In the Utah release, the portfolio is moving to the standard portfolio and you have to opt in. And when doing so, you'll lose, I believe, some of those metrics that surface up to DPM. And as you mentioned, I believe you gain them back by reconfiguring the groups, the KPI groups. So I was hoping that you could go over some of that transition, and if those metrics just recompile on their own, if you already use the out-of-the-box KPI groups, or you have to actually, after you opt in and you lose those, like the mean time to repair metric, if you have to now do certain things, if so, what are those certain things? That's question one. The second question is, in the left app nav, there is an assign to My Applications module, or excuse me, the My Applications module under the DPM applications says My Applications and the filter is assigned to. Want to try to understand that because most of the filters, for example, in APM and others, are looking at the owner or the IT owner out of the box fields. And it's a little confusing with the assigned to because it's not really even on the form out of the box. So if there's a reason for it, I'd like to know that. That's just a secondary, but the primary question is the portfolio.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
You got it, Caitlin? Okay.
I'll do the first one and then yeah, I'll pass it over to you to take the second one, Justin. So for the first question, if folks are not aware, we released an update to the service portfolio management portfolio structure, which is what we feed currently into the enterprise portfolio module. So the two main, or I should say the three main tables are service portfolios, taxonomy nodes, and then we also have this table called layers. Now, in the original design, you had to choose a number of layers that your portfolio would have, and that would have a regimented and restricted structure for, you couldn't have different levels of depth in different areas of your portfolio. So we got a lot of feedback around that being challenging to work with. And then once that was established, it was pretty much impossible to edit. So you couldn't add additional layers. It made it very difficult to evolve your portfolio over time. So what we did was we introduced this update where we got rid of the notion of layers. So now portfolios can be built where it's just relying on the node to node relationship. And it makes it much more flexible and nimble. So you can evolve it, you can add nodes, you can remove them. And we're using the same tables. So your current portfolios will not be impacted at all, in the sense that we're just removing the reference to the layer. You won't have to recreate them. You don't have to migrate them. The thing that Lou mentioned, though, is we do not include the weighting, offering weighting, performance metrics weighting, the performance metrics reference, or the related list on the portfolio record. And the reason for that is we have sunsetted the performance score and the weighting with Service Owner Workspace. And that, again, it goes back to a lot of the feedback we got, that the performance scoring feature and how we were rating and rolling up data was very limiting, and it wasn't meeting the majority of our customer needs. And so instead, we've introduced KPI groups. We use those same indicators. And what we've done then is we've wrapped them in the KPI group structure. And so what I'll demonstrate in a little bit is how you can, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think now we have about 9 out-of-box KPI groups. And so you can use those as is. You can create your own. You can edit the ones that we ship if you want. There's a lot of flexibility there, but we wanted to give a really nice starting point. And those include the PA indicators, the required breakdowns that you'll need. And then what you can do is you can directly map the KPI groups we ship, or you can use some of those pieces that we already give you to kind of form your own KPI groups. And then you can report on those key metrics at each level of your portfolio, all the way up to the top portfolio, but also including, of course, your services and your offerings. And you don't have to use the KPI groups in the context of a portfolio. You can just report on your services and offerings. That's another really nice update that we made with DPM, where in Service Owner Workspace, you had to have a portfolio to even access the workspace. And that was limiting because it's challenging to create and maintain and set up all the weighting and everything. So there's a much lower barrier to entry to be able to take advantage of DPM with or without the portfolios. But I hope that helps to answer the first question, Lou. For the second question, we did respond to this. I think you had created a case for it. But yeah, Justin, do you want to share what we had found there?
Yeah, well, I think I might have misunderstood the question, Lou. What we were looking at was in DPM and in the next experience screens, what shows up, and it's IT application owner, I think, is the join field there. But it sounds like you're actually talking about the L1 navigation, the app navigator stuff on the left. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're in the left navigator. It says I think business applications.
My business applications.
Yeah, okay. And it points to assign to.
Yeah, that does seem, I just saw that, and that does seem wrong. So I will log a bug.
Okay, thank you. And Caitlin, I think I appreciate the explanation. I know others have questions. So the only thing I was not clear, and maybe you're going to demo it, is if you're losing as a result of moving to the standard portfolio, it's basically blowing away those metrics like mean time to repair, and the KPI groups, because you're not using the edit widgets, I guess, I think it is, or edit metrics or metric weights, excuse me, on the business app form or the app service form or the service offering form. if it's going to ignore those and those are set today and those are actually pulling in those values, do you have to do something to get those values back, like mean time to repair, or will they just come back on their own?
The KPI groups won't be impacted at all. What we've done is we've removed the weighting and those performance metrics, the related list for the performance metrics with the performance score.
Okay,
So
well, maybe you'll
KPI
demonstrate
group-
that later.
Okay, yeah, KPI groups are not impacted because that's a new and separate feature. The base indicators that make up the performance score still exist, and those are the ones that we support in the context of DPM. Yeah, so we could get into that a little bit. So
Thank you.
okay, I want to do an overview of DPM and jump into the actual product. And so if Chris or if Justin, if you guys could keep track of some questions that I should be speaking to or responding to over the video, that would be awesome. It's hard to read and talk at the same time. Okay, so digital portfolio management, I think there is some level of familiarity. That the real idea here is that it's bringing data from across the ServiceNow platform, and even through some of your external tools, through some additional features that we've built out, to give that service owner, the service delivery teams, that app owner, the end-to-end view of the services, the app services that they own and are responsible for or accountable for, and give them a place where they can build personal portfolios that represent their ecosystem, as well as give them access into like the structure where things like their services live in the broader organizational context. It is a store app, so we release quarterly. We just are wrapping a release now for May, and we're going to be shifting into our August work. So I can talk a little bit about our focus for that release. And this May release will be Tokyo compatible. That's the main version that we're releasing on. One of the things that we've really tried to do with our strategy is look at where the majority of you guys are in terms of which family you're on, and support that. So it's nice in the sense that we can introduce new features and really try to build out more of a robust platform, knowing where the majority of you guys are today from a family point of view. So that's a nice flexibility that we have with DPM. If you could go to the next slide, Chris. So our target persona, we're referring to them as a solution owner, and really the term is more of like an archetype to represent different like roles that you would assign to this person, because it's typically not their title, but you might call them internally in your own organization a service owner or an application owner or even a product manager, product owner. Since when we did a bunch of early research to understand more of the nuance of this persona, the terms were used kind of interchangeably, but the core responsibilities and job of this person remain the same. So the key aspects being they are responsible for that service, that app through the end-to-end life cycle. So they're looking at, what's my roadmap? What do we need to build out? How do we need to improve it? What's the status of either the projects that we're working on or our epics and releases? What is the data that we're receiving about how it's actually performing? What are the incidents? What are the changes that are happening? What are the SLAs? Are we hitting those or not? Our availability metrics? What kind of requests are we getting? And then what we wanted to do was also support that continual improvement, that optimization. So often you see an issue and then the owner is responsible for addressing it. So how do we close the loop and bring that back around, that true end to end?
Caitlin, do you see this as being a business role or an IT role or a hybrid between the two?
It really depends on what it is that they own. So for instance, we'll serve owners who they may own a bunch of app services. So they're much more on the technical side of things. And then, we'll also have folks who own business services, something that's much more like the strategy, the business needs around it are much different than somebody who's really living in that app space. So we are seeing that it's kind of fluid depending on what it is that the person owns.
So it is different than server role, right? The one which we have in SPM.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? You broke up a little bit for me.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say here is this solution owner is different than service owner?
No, so it includes, it's an umbrella almost. So you could think of it's included in that. So instead of saying your service owner, your app owner, your product manager, your service delivery, you know, all these different terms that could represent somebody who has that end-to-end accountability. And customers that we're speaking with, there's also different types of like levels that we're seeing use the product that we didn't necessarily anticipate. We thought possibly, but we weren't certain. So for example, the service delivery manager, they're more involved in the run aspect. So they're living kind of more on that run tab, but they're really interested in those kinds of metrics. We're also seeing some advantage from folks who are kind of involved in the ITSM processes. So at the enterprise portfolio level, I'm interested in seeing, you know, how are incident MTTR across the portfolio? How many are we closing? How many are we closing with issues? Things like that. So it's a broader spectrum than we anticipated, but really who we were targeting is somebody who needs visibility into the end-to-end. You know, they may spend more time in one area, but they need data from across that life cycle because it gives them that holistic view into what they manage. You know, so many of our products really focus on a specific piece of the puzzle, but they don't give the entire picture. And so that's the mission that we're going after, is pulling all those pieces together and trying to build that out. And so it's a work in progress. Of course, there's a lot that we can still do, but that's really the idea for digital portfolio management and who we're trying to solve for. Does that make sense? Does that resonate?
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, if you could jump to the next slide, Chris. So some of the key pain points that we heard in our research, this is really more thematic. There was a lot of different pains, again, depending on who we spoke with and how the organization worked or what kinds of things that this persona was involved with. There was really no place for them to go. And honestly, it kind of made defining that role really challenging because they couldn't say, that's my service. I can see it. I can see all the data. They were, basically teams were trying to pull manual reports together for them, or they were having to go into all these different systems. I saw a lot of really elaborate OneNotes and Excel documents and SharePoint sites to try to build that for themselves. So that was really missing. And especially in the context of ServiceNow, we have service portfolio management, application portfolio management, strategic portfolio management. They do serve those personas, but not in that holistic end-to-end way. And it's not consistent with how we are sourcing and surfacing the data, how we're presenting it to the user. So they have to familiarize themselves with different tables, data models, and they just weren't. So the feedback that we got was, I don't use ServiceNow. It's not friendly to me. It's not giving me the view that I need. And so that gave us, an opportunity to try to come in, build that view, try to connect those dots, pull all that data that we have in ServiceNow for this person, and not make them go and try to familiarize themselves with all these different solutions. So that was, really our target focus going into solving for our MVP. And of course, that has evolved, a bit as we learned more, and we're continuing to build out that data model and solve for them. But these are kind of like those core pain points that helped us launch and realize the vision of DPM. Next slide, Chris. So this slide is intended to kind of illustrate how we attempted to solve for DPM. It's not exhaustive. So this is not the only places that we source the data from. It's more of an illustration of how we've approached it. So you can see DPM is at the top, serving that solution owner. And we have these different areas in the platform, different product areas that serve their own set of personas, and they may also serve that service owner or like in part. So for example, within strategic portfolio management, there are products that serve the project manager. It gives them views into all the projects that they're responsible for managing all the tasks, milestones. They can work that project from the initiation to close. A solution owner isn't a project manager, but they may have projects that are associated to their services, for example. So they need to bring a new service online. There's a project with a bunch of tasks to build out, design, create, implement, deliver, and then, monitor that early implementation of the service. So they want to have visibility into it. They want to know what's going on. They want to know, are we on track? What are the key tasks? Do I need to get involved in anything? Do I need to help them block? It's similar across the board, right? With APM all the way down to ITOM. So what we did was we said, what data is important? What is important to surface for this persona? What's going to help give them clarity? And we surface that data in the context of what they own. So they can go to their service or their offering or their business application or their application service, and they can see the related data for that particular entity. And then what we've been working on is how do we then aggregate that data and roll that up to different levels of, portfolios. So we've started with the enterprise portfolio in the context of services, trying to roll up key data. So you can start to track, okay, at this, department level, what are those key metrics looking like? And up the chain we go. We're looking at how do we do that for personal portfolios to make them more of a summary view, aggregate some of that data, make it aggregate or actionable, and really help to bring those disparate pieces together for them. So that's, how we've started and how we're evolving, how DPM is built out and the intention of it. So like I had talked about the relationship between these products, DPM isn't intended to replace any of these things. It's more sourcing and surfacing the data from those places in a more meaningful context for this person. Okay, and then I do see a question. It's strategic portfolio management. Good question. So yeah, SPM, that was a real bummer for us because, and also service operator workspace. We had the service owner workspace. So SOW, our acronym, taken there, and now SPM. So yeah, SPM in this context is the strategic portfolio management. We can kind of think of service portfolio management as falling within the ITSM space, although that is pretty broad. Yeah, exactly, Mike. It was ours. We're the OG. Okay, any other questions about this part? All right, if you go to the next, I think that might be it.
Caitlin, here's a quick question for you from chat. Is there a data map of sorts to visualize the relationships of the different roles and personas? And where my mind went to was our Excel spreadsheet of like literally the data sources, but I think that she's looking for like specifically like how the people and roles fit together, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we have that visual. That could be definitely useful. And when you say role, do you mean like a ServiceNow role, or do you mean role in the broader sense of I'm a product manager, that's my role?
It was I think, is it Casey that asked the question? I'm not sure, but in the question it's like different roles persona. So I think she's thinking like a solution owner versus a enterprise architect versus like a more persona is my guess.
I see. Okay. Yeah, we do not have that. And maybe using the term solution owner is confusing. We wanted to make it as kind of applicable and broad as possible, and thinking more in terms of what types of things does this person do? And then they may call themselves different things. Like, for example, in ServiceNow, we have service owners, but they also do own applications. In other companies, you might refer to, them as an application owner, app owner, or even a product owner, product manager. And so we didn't want to get too stuck in the semantics, because I think that can cause a lot of confusion. And it's, people will define service in 12 different ways. So we wanted to use that to be more of an archetype of responsibilities and tasks that we wanted to solve for. And then looking at the CSDM, focus on those key areas of ownership: app service, services and offerings, and business applications. we are looking and working with that team around the products, like trying to work on the product model approach and having products within DPM. There needs to be a lot more clarity and work with that team. So that's been ongoing conversations. And then also working across other product areas, because we're very beholden to how products create their data model and then how we can leverage it. And so there's just a lot of interoperability that we're working through, but that is something that we're looking at. I think we've also gotten questions around like business capability ownership, which we haven't really gone there yet. We do surface them, but we don't have those as like a core entity that's owned in the context of DPM. So we're starting really with that core CSDM approach. Okay. So if there are no other questions at this very moment, what I could do is jump into a demo of an instance.
You want me to stop sharing so you can hop in here, Caitlin?
Yeah, I can steal it.
And we do only have about 15 minutes left. Just want to do a quick time check. So you know.
I'm going to try to get the chat open here too. Okay, so I'm on one of our kind of demo instances. We've been making some changes recently, so you'll have to bear with me if there are things that are like a little buggy. So right now I'm logged in as the system admin, so I can show you basically what our module looks like in all. So within DPM, we have a couple of key areas that we surface. So we have our KPI groups. We've mentioned this, and I'll show you what that looks like. These are the services that we surface. We do kind of call out the my and the all. This is related to that question that Lou had. The main fields that we look at on the service, the app service, and the offering is the owned by field. So when we say, the idea is like, if it's mine, if you're in the owned by, we have considered trying to open that up a little bit more. So we are also looking at a delivery manager, for example, or someone who might be a delegate of the owner. But that's kind of how we term like the owner of that thing. And then when it comes to business apps, we look at the IT app owner field.
Hey, Caitlin, I think Daron put in APM, just as you said, it's the owned by, it's the managed by, it's the IT application owner, and I think it's the business owner. So they're adding all four as the default filter.
Okay. Yeah, I'll touch base with him. When he joined, the product owner, or the product manager, I should say, for APM that we worked most closely with, has moved to a different role. And so there is work, I'm sure, that needs to be done as Doran's starting to make some updates and changes and breathe some new life into APM. So yeah, we are always looking at ways to evolve it. So anything like that is great. If let us know what resonates with you, what would be most applicable, and then we can get that in our backlog.
I think it's, you get a lot of different feedbacks from a lot of different customers and take action as a result. But I think what's most important, whatever action ServiceNow takes across your different product lines, they should be the same, similar to what I think Scott and Mark did with the life cycle stage and life cycle stage status across the entire platform now, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so we also have portfolios. As I mentioned, this is referring back to the service portfolio table within service portfolio management. And at the moment, this is what is sourcing the enterprise portfolios. It's called enterprise portfolios because we have always intended to open that up to incorporate or to be able to support portfolios for business apps as well as app services. So that's coming in our August release. And then this is related to personal portfolios. So these are created by the logged in user. So someone with a DPM manager role can create them, of course, as well as our DPM admin role. But the idea here is that they're flexible, they're flat. So, and you can add anything, services, offerings, app services. business apps to that portfolio. And it can mean anything that that person wants it to mean, and they can share it with other users. So that's the personal portfolio feature. We have our business apps and app services. In our data model, the app service is where a lot of that run data comes from, and we roll that up to the business application level. So there's that relationship between those two. And then within the admin section, we have some pages that we've created for configuring DPM without having to make updates within the UI Builder experience. So DPM is built on UI Builder, which is great if you're comfortable and familiar with it, because you can basically take what we've started with, create copies of those pages, and edit them to suit your particular needs. That can be very challenging and complicated if you're not familiar with UI Builder, and it's a pretty new feature within ServiceNow. So we're working through some bugs there. So what we've done is we've tried to alleviate some of that pain with these properties, and we'll get into that in a lot of detail in one of our other topic sessions. But again, if you're kind of playing around with DPM, you'll find that within the admin section. You can find the workspace here. If you want to go and access it here, you can also click on this link and it will open in a new tab. So I have opened it from this workspace view. This is our homepage. The idea here is that we surface records that are related to any of the solutions that the person owns or that they've added to their personal portfolio. And then we have specific criteria that we will surface those records into the owner based on that criteria, meaning we're not going to show necessarily every single incident. We would ideally show critical incidents. So P1s, major incidents, even P2 incidents. So one thing that we did in our just the release that we were wrapping up now, this is hot off the press, we're introducing a new needs attention design and approach for how we source the data. In our previous releases, we've used contextual search. And so that looks for and returns the results. What we found is that's not performant, especially when dealing with massive amounts of records. And so we, and based on customer feedback and user experience feedback, we have updated the design of the needs attention, and then we've used data brokers instead to return the results. So it's much faster, and it'll return a broader set of data. So for example, in our previous release, we surfaced or we returned 10 records of each type to keep it so it doesn't completely overwhelm the user. Well, that's not an accurate representation of what might be going on in their ecosystem. So we don't have a cap now. And again, it's much faster. So that's really cool. And I'll kind of show you the design of what those updates look like. It's something that you can opt into. So we will give it to you by default so that you have the latest and greatest, and by opt-in, I should say, you can opt out and return to the previous way of working, especially if you've made changes to the contextual search and how things are surfaced and sourced. So we'll leave that be for you in those scenarios. The other thing we do is we surface personal portfolios, so you can quickly access them here, as well as the enterprise portfolios. These are the main modules on the left. We go into the personal portfolio. Here you'll be able to see portfolios that this person has created. We also will automatically generate a personal portfolio for the logged in user if they're in the owned by or the IT app owner fields on the records that we mentioned. That's just a kind of a starting place. If they don't have one, they can easily walk through step-by-step how to create them here. And it's all done within the context of DPM. It's very user-friendly. So it's an easy way to get started for that particular user who might not be as comfortable with navigating ServiceNow. We also have this enterprise portfolio module, like I had mentioned. This again is looking at service portfolios. We have a preview page here on the right. They can go and access details for that portfolio, and then also expand and review the structure of that portfolio. So these are all taxonomy nodes, and then you can actually get down into specific services and the offerings. So this is going to get a little bit of a redesign in our August release once we introduce the different types of portfolios, enterprise portfolios. Yes, Lou.
So that mean time to resolve, that's what I was talking about. That's what gets blown away when you opt into the new standard portfolio. And also on one of the past calls, it wasn't just me, but it was another customer who articulated, after you have so many objects, right, services, service offerings, the interface starts bogging down. Now, you just mentioned some performance improvements on the homepage with the tiles. Are you still looking in? Yeah, the needs attention. Are you still looking into the overall performance when you have, you know, say more than 15, 20 offerings per service? Or is that still a limitation?
So we're.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're always looking at how we can improve performance. And the needs attention was causing issues, especially when you're looking at so many services and offerings. So that performance improvement makes a huge difference, especially in this particular context. So that's a huge win. And that applies on every single page in every single view of DPM where there's needs attention. And then we did focus our previous release on performance, stability, reliability of the product. So that was kind of our main target for this last release. I don't know, Justin, if you want to talk about anything else that we've been looking at related to performance.
Well, just specifically from this question, like I think the changes we made to needs attention in particular were specifically for the use case of having like 600 services in a node or whatnot. And so you should see, much better performance for your use case.
What version is that in the store? The upcoming one?
It's the upcoming one that's going to ship in early May. I think it's like May 5th.
Okay, thank you. And what about the meantime to resolve, Caitlin, that gets blown away with the standard catalog? Do you see what I mean? Or is that an issue that you all have to go look at?
Yeah,
You'd have to send or create a case or something, because I don't think we've seen that. Sorry, Justin, go ahead.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I know that's not an automated indicator. It's a calculated or functional indicator. It's slightly different. And so, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some nuance there that we're missing, Lou. And so, send over a case task and we'll see what's going on.
Yeah, all right, you have the case. I'll stand by. Thank you.
Oh, we already have the case. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so this view will then also update anytime you click on a different part of the taxonomy, so then you can kind of see how it's contributing. When we go and we look at the details for a service, for example, this is the layout that we've applied for anything or any solution type that someone would own in DPM. So they'll see this header area and then these key tabs. For the business app, which I'll show, we also have a risk tab, and that's related to the work that APM did to integrate with GRC risk. And so we do surface that in its own tab. One of the things that's in our backlog is introducing risk throughout the different solutions. So that is something that we'll be looking more into. And so then thus would add those tabs elsewhere. Here we have our plan tab. So you can see key planning objects to different types of records. We also have a link into the I think it's portfolio planning. So it used to be alignment planner. We create ad hoc roadmaps for each of the solutions. And then you can, I should say the user can create and manage and prioritize their roadmaps through that relationship. They just click view, it'll open in a new tab and they can go ahead and take action there. On the build tab for services, we show projects, we show changes, and then we also show improvement initiatives. This is from our continual improvement management. These different sections can be like turned on and off through those system properties, like I mentioned. So if you're not using projects, you could hide that and you could focus on a different type of record that you use to manage work that's happening for this particular entity. On the run tab, this is where you can get more data around the KPI groups. So these are, you saw it in the enterprise portfolio, but this is an example of a KPI group that we ship. We have, again, I think like 9 different KPI groups, and they reference PA indicators. And then what we do within the context of the KPI group is we can create like hierarchies and relationships. So if I'm looking at availability and I click on this particular KPI and I drill down, here you can see the availability metrics, the trend, and then that we also have these supporting indicators. So you would be able to look at things like outages or average outage duration. And then we have the records that make up this metric that the user can get access to. So it's a nice way to build out different levels of data for that user so that they can, it's like progressive disclosure. We're not hitting them with, 50 different metrics on the same page. And again, you can choose whatever your supporting metrics would be and how you want to surface that to your users and what metrics you want to surface and show. It's fully configurable. And then on our info tab, we surface.
Kaylin, we are at time.
Oh, sorry.
You're okay. This has been, I guess we should close up if that's okay.
Yes.
And continue on the next call. Thank you everyone for attending. This was incredibly fruitful. I'm spending a ton of time going through everything in the chat and making sure that we're addressing it properly. Be on the lookout for an email with a recording of this session, the deck we shared, as well as documentation so you can prep for the call in a couple weeks. If you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all.
Thank you.